This is a presentation of the Sports Source Digital Network, presented by Hearthside Bank.
Welcome into the Sports Source Digital Network. John Pennington, joined by Bob Hodge, Vince Ferrara, Ryan Callahan. Appreciate everybody being here. Appreciate you watching. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. That does us a world of good. All right, we're going to talk today about the most important stats for Tennessee this fall. And we've each picked one. So what are the most important statistics? If Tennessee's going to have a good year, we're going to look back and say this number. And obviously I've told these guys, nobody can be a smart ass and say point differential. You can't do that. Total offense. So, Vince, why don't you start us out? Where are you going?
I'm going to say deep ball accuracy, and that's we did on the Sports Source not too long ago, the 30.
The number of catches, or are you going like completion percentage?
Completion percentage of 20-plus yards.
Okay.
You had the great stats and numbers on what Tennessee has done through the years going back to Hendon Hooker on 30-plus yards.
Yep.
But Tennessee, honestly, has struggled even in 20-plus yard throws ever since Hendon Hooker. His percentage was 44% in 20-plus yards. Now, it dropped to 30% with Joe Milton, 32 under Nico Iamaleava. Joey Aguilar, on average in his 2 years at App State, was at 36%. So kind of in the middle of those two. I think everything else, if you're accurate, the touchdowns are going to improve.
Yep.
The total yards are going to improve. All those things, and then the interceptions will go down. That is the key to me, is that completion percentage. I think it needs to be closer to 40 than 30. It doesn't have to be what Hendon Hooker did, because the defense is so much better than what Hendon Hooker had on his team. But I think that 20-plus yard completion percentage is going to show what this offense can be and put them closer potentially to a college football playoff berth if that is there.
I think that's a great one because so much of this offense, if you look back, and it's like if they don't have the deep ball or they don't have tempo, one or the other. It just looks like a pedestrian offense. In the last couple of years, they haven't had the deep ball. They went, in terms of the 30-plus yarders, which is what I always throw out, they went from 30 in his first year under Heupel to 40, down to 18, and down to 15. That is a monster drop.
Huge drop.
From 40 to 18 to 15. So, yeah, I think that's huge, and I think that your whole offense is kind of revved up by those deep balls. The deep shots are what, that was the differentiator for you in 2022.
No question. That's what this offense is predicated on, is the deep shots and running the football. And I think those are connected. And even in your numbers on the Sports Source, you see the attempts keep going down.
Yep.
Now, I think some of that is, the quarterback maybe being risk averse, the coaches doing what they need to with the personnel.
Do you have the stud receivers you did in having Tillman and Hyatt? Those are two pretty good receivers.
Right. And look, it's twofold. It's the receivers catching the ball also. Yeah. That was a little bit of those numbers that we talked about, how reliable those receivers were for Hendon Hooker, how inconsistent those guys were the last couple of years. So it's not just the quarterback, Aguilar, whoever ends up being. It's those receivers being up to par, making the catches, and then everything else will take off after that.
I like that pick. I had a second thought that we're not gonna be my official choice, but my other thought was yards per attempt, and it goes hand in hand with that, but not entirely the same. That dipped last year with Nico, and part of that was also not just stretching the field. Screen passes going for next to nothing. Those screens have to work for this offense to be effective. So some way or another, that yards per attempt has to go back up.
Which gets back to having receivers who can make a man miss.
Yeah.
You can put it in their hands, they can do something with it. It's nice that you can scheme them open. Yep. It's nice if you can throw them open. But sometimes you just throw a screen to a guy, he's got to do something with it. Yeah. Bob, what do you got?
I'm going to go with this great high-speed pass-oriented offense. The running game.
Yeah.
Because we've had a stat on the show on Sundays. When they rush for more than 150 yards, they win.
Yeah.
When they don't rush for 150 yards, it gets dicey. Start getting farther away from 150, and it gets really, really dicey. And I think that's all going to come into play with you. You lost Dylan Sampson off this team. So does Peyton Lewis become the guy? Or do him and Deshaun Bishop give you a nice 1-2 punch of, pretty good running backs, but it's also going to lay on your offensive line a whole lot too. And that's where the question comes. I think even with good but not great running backs, this offense works pretty well. Does the offensive line allow your good running backs to become better running backs? Do you get that 150 yards a game? And so that's what I'm going to be looking at. With all the passing numbers, I think Vince's point is fantastic about the deep throws. But can you run the ball and be complimentary? Because last year when you couldn't throw, you leaned into that running game a whole lot. You lean, on the other side of the ball, you were leaning into your defense, and you went from high speed, we throw it everywhere, to a slower pace, we run it, but you were able to do it and do it pretty well. So I'm going to look at rushing yards.
I think that's a great pick, and the interesting thing there is, in normal year, I would say not, because it's Heupel's offense. They're going to go for 200 yards a game. It's what they do. You got 4 new starters in the offensive line.
Yes.
You're going to have a 3-headed monster at running back, you think. Is somebody going to take that over? They typically always have a rotation.
Yes.
Last year it got different. Just Sampson became the bell cow. But that's a lot of question marks in the run game.
And you have a question mark at quarterback.
And you have a new quarterback.
Right.
So to me, I think the run game is more important this year than it normally is. And you always look at it, and it's like is the run game just a byproduct of the pass and the deep ball? And it's like I'll flip-flop every year. Somebody else will say, oh, no, it's all about the run game that sets up the pass. No, it's the deep ball that sets up the run. I've kind of arrived at it's the deep ball. When you take the deep ball away, you can run for 200 yards and it still doesn't matter. But I think this year, because of all that changing, I don't know that it is guaranteed you're going to get 200 yards a game out of this bunch. I don't know, especially how does Aguilar play? Is anybody going to be worried about the pass game? Or are they just going to load up in the box and you don't have Dylan Sampson anymore? I think that's a good pick.
I like it. I think they will be a better running team maybe than people are expecting them to be, but it's the most questionable group of running backs they've had since year 1.
Based on what?
I think Deshaun Bishop's a better running back than people make him out to be.
And I think he's a pretty good running back. He is an SEC caliber running back.
Yeah.
When he came from Carnes, I thought some of that was just local,
right,
and local kid. But I agree with that. But see, I don't worry about the backs. I worry about the offensive line. That's where my concern comes.
So that's where I'll say this. You're not wrong at all to point out the question mark at having 4 new starters. 2 of them are from the portal, but 2 are not, and those guys have barely played. David Sanders hasn't played at all. If he's your starting right tackle, if William Satterwhite's your starting center, he didn't start a game yet. So a lot of question marks there. But talent-wise, just pure talent, I think they actually are upgrading across the board talent-wise with what they have. Inexperience in a true freshman, though, might counteract that this year. So that's the positive, is maybe those guys, if they play up to their talent, if David Sanders is as good at advertised as a true freshman, if Lance Hurd plays up to his potential, which he obviously did not last year, this offensive line could be pretty good.
And I think this offense, if all the other elements are going, they don't have to be dominant on the offensive line.
Spacing.
It's spacing. The tempo is a big part of it. You mentioned the pass game, the deep ball. That is in conjunction with the tempo. And I think they're able to accumulate a lot of yards when they're running on first down after snapping the ball really quickly. And teams aren't set yet, and they can get some nice yards after contact because guys are just out of position, things like that.
Yeah, that's one reason their run game has always been successful. Yes, I agree with you. It's a lot of it is they're not ready for it. You're snapping it quick, and they're out of position.
So I definitely think our first 2 points are connected in a lot.
Oh, I think they are as well. Yeah.
Ryan, what do you got?
I looked around, especially on defense, just trying to come up with something different. I thought we'd lean a little more offense with these. I thought at a certain point, am I overthinking this? We've been talking since we found out about Joey Aguilar being the quarterback Tennessee had picked from the portal, his interceptions. So I think it's interceptions thrown. This offense has been predicated on taking care of the ball every year under Josh Heupel. He's managed to do it at multiple stops now. Even Joe Milton, that a lot of people question his decision-making, took good care of the ball. Didn't throw a pick for a long time. That's the biggest question mark about your likely new starting quarterback. He threw 10 interceptions as a first-year starter at App State, 14 last year on a team that lost more games, and that does make it harder to avoid interceptions. But if he starts turning it over this year in a way Tennessee typically has not, that's an immediate setback for this team. I mean, it's easy to say turnover margin or something like that, and I could have gone that for the cop-out, I guess. But
that's the most important stat in football, so it's kind of a guaranteed. Yeah.
But I think interceptions is a big deal for this. If you the difference between 5 and 10 interceptions for Aguilar, if he's the guy, might be the difference between 9 wins and 7 wins.
It might be the difference between him being the guy and not being the guy.
Absolutely.
If he throws enough, I mean, Heupel's not a guy who's used to seeing a lot of interceptions. I've gone back all the way back to UCF. I don't think he's ever had a guy that threw double-digit interceptions.
I think it's 14 in his 4 years by all the quarterbacks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, 7.
So if he sees a guy that goes out there and starts putting it up for grabs too much, you may be seeing Merklinger or McIntyre or somebody else thrown in there.
And that's the question mark about Merklinger, too. If you have to change quarterbacks, he threw a pick in the spring game and got picked off in 7-on-7 during the warm-ups before the spring game.
I actually thought last year that Dylan Sampson could lose his job because he fumbled in the first quarter, 3 straight games. And I thought, okay, this is a team that since Heupel has been here, like you said, they haven't turned the ball over very much. And so here's your SEC, or was going to be your SEC Offensive Player of the Year, and he had 3 straight games where he coughed it up in the first quarter. I was actually sort of shocked that they hung with him because there's a lot of places where that gets you put on the bench.
At least just to send a message for a game.
Exactly. For an extended amount of time, you're not starting right here because every time you do, you turn it over.
I don't know if it was just their natural rotation or if it was a benching, but usually the series after that, he wasn't in the game, right?
Yeah.
And then we saw him again. But, I mean, they only had 15 total turnovers on offense. That's a pretty good number. Now you're talking about turnover margin. They only got 21 plus 6. That's decent. But this has been a coaching staff that is not a fan of turning the ball over, and we'll see how patient they would be with inexperienced guys behind them.
Yep. We weren't going to go with turnover margin because it's just too obvious.
Yeah.
But this defense believes in being aggressive, and aside from turnovers, the best way to stop another team on their offense is to get a sack. Put them behind the sticks. To me, that's the number one thing, sacks, because I think you are going to be leaning on your defense this year. Last year, you had a ton of hurries, all kinds of pressures. James Pierce was the pressure hurry man. He didn't get a lot of people on the ground. I mean, in terms of what was expected, he was being talked about as the number 1 player in college football coming into the season, which was just ridiculous. But he didn't get guys on the ground. And I think this year they need to get some guys on the ground. Yeah. I'm less confident in the offense this year than ever before. Now, I don't think the offense is broken. I just think you're breaking in a lot of new players at a lot of different positions. So that makes me have, my feelers are up. I'm concerned about that. So I need your defense to be more formidable. Even if they aren't a shutdown defense, sacks will turn that ball over. Sacks will stop another team's drive. So to me, sacks way up there for this team, and we know that's nothing unusual. There's not a team in the world that doesn't want sacks, and certainly Tim Banks has believed in aggressive football since he's been here. But that, to me, is a stat to watch. Can they get the quarterback on the ground more often? If they do, this defense could carry the offense again, maybe as well as it did last year, which is a big ask.
And I think going into the season with McCoy injured, that becomes even bigger because does he come back like he was? And when does he come back at all?
Yep.
Because that's usually almost a 12-month injury that it takes to get back on the field. So that makes that even bigger.
You're going to have one new safety as well. Who knows how much if they do in fact play Boot Carter on offensive snaps, there are probably some snaps where they're going to save him and not play him on defense, and then you have somebody else in there. Maybe it's Jalen McMurray where they're still veteran, but you're going to have some new guys on the back end. So to your point, get to the quarterback and save those guys from having to cover.
Yeah, Turrentine and Beasley and Farouk, you're not having to worry as much if you're getting the quarterback on the ground.
And I think it's a great choice because it's the biggest question mark about the defense in a lot of ways. You're replacing James Pierce and you're replacing Omar Norman-Lott. Those are your 2 best pure pass rushers on last year's team. You've got 2 new guys who Joshua Joseph has played a lot of football. But behind him, Caleb Herring, a guy that not enough people are talking about probably, is going to be important to this team. He's in year 3. He's a former highly ranked prospect. He needs to put it together. He looks the part. He's grown so much since he got on campus. He's about 50 pounds heavier now than when he arrived. Looks like a monster. Can he put it together on the field? If he can't, boy, Josh Joseph's got to do some heavy lifting. They need Caleb Herring to take a big step. So that's a great one to me because there are some real question marks about how good they're going to be at getting after the quarterback.
And I thought there were times last year where Tyree West benefited from having James Pierce get all the attention on the other side. I thought Tyree West put up some nice numbers last year, better than I expected going in. You never know who that – if the attention's on this guy, then always look to this other guy because that's the guy whose numbers are going to get up a little bit because this guy's getting all the, double teamed. So it opens the door for somebody else. So it'll be interesting to see who that other person is this year. Any other things?
One of the numbers I was going to throw out was penalties because this team drives me nuts with penalties. But then you look at it, okay, they've been having a lot of penalties ever since Josh Heupel got here. They've been successful with it. So it's like, get all the penalties you want. Doesn't seem to make that big of a difference.
Yeah, but can you dig your way out from behind penalties this year with all the new stuff you got on offense?
And when you get that pre-snap penalty on offense and 2nd and 6 goes to 2nd and 11 and you don't make that first down and your defense maybe not as good as it was last year, we'll see, then do they become bigger. But I just thought this team always gets a lot of penalties, so not a number I'm going to worry about.
I'll throw out one more. I didn't go with it because it's not as black and white about whether it's a good or a bad thing, and that's a hard thing to say that you should go with that. Time of possession is fascinating to me. Is this team going to go back to the fast pace that we saw, or they slowed it down more last year? Yeah. Are they going to be that offense ever again, or was last year kind of a shift like we saw Philip Fulmer have at times in his career where he just said, I'm going to do this from now on. That's kind of going to be my thing. Did Josh Heupel find something, or was that just what he had to do with last year's team? If they're not a fast-paced offense, that would concern me a little bit about this team's ceiling.
Well, I mean, if you're going to do that, then don't run the veer and shoot.
Yeah.
Because, I mean,
I agree.
It was designed for the tempo.
100%
so if you take the tempo out of it, that's like you can't lose the tempo, you can't lose the deep ball, and you can't lose the run game. And they lost 2/3 of that the last couple of years.
Well, and impressively, they still found a way to get to college football.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
just like that.
And what's funny? Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and that was something we learned about Josh Heupel is adjusting to his personnel. Is there another layer or other things that he has to adjust to make some of these key stats happen in a team that's going to be very different in a lot of areas?
And when we talk tempo. There were people all last year who talked about the fact, man, Tennessee with this incredible tempo. And you would read these anonymous coaches, they would do their year-end comments and everything. They would talk about, well, that Tennessee offense is fast. Okay, it is up-tempo for a lot of places, but it wasn't 2022 fast.
No,
it wasn't that hyperspace tempo that they went the first couple of years. And that, to me, is what they need to get back to. I'll give you there's no stat for it. I wish there was a stat to grade the center-quarterback relationship.
Yeah.
They're not under center, so I can't just say fumbled exchanges.
Right.
Tempo may be a part of that, but to me, that's going to be a big one to watch because not only do you have two new guys, but it's not like they work together in spring. They'll be working together for a couple months and then going. Usually you look at it and say, well, the offseason workouts are all going to be about the quarterback and receivers. Ollie Lane did a thing with us here on the channel. It's like, well, I hope Satterwhite and Aguilar are also cutting some time out just to do some snaps because that's a whole other issue that nobody's really talked about, the fact that it's not just a new quarterback. People are like, who's got the playbook? He's on campus now. It's good. Yeah, okay.
Put your over-under at 5 bad snaps. Under, you're good. Over, you're in trouble.
Yeah, with a brand new center who, to be honest, I've heard some reports over there that tell me it's not been smooth this spring. So that center quarterback thing is a concern for me.
Well, they have to be on the same page in terms of protections, and there's some times where Cooper Mays would move stuff that maybe Nico didn't see, and vice versa. So that relationship is huge.
So we'll just create the stat: the quarterback center
camaraderie.
It's the QBCC.
The QBCC.
Only on the SSDN. Thanks to these guys. Ryan Callahan, Vince Ferrara, Bob Hodge, thanks to you for watching. Thanks to Hearthside Bank for supporting this channel. Be sure to like it if you like this kind of commentary, this kind of silly discussion. We bring it to you all the time here at the Sports Source Digital Network. We'll see you next time.